infrastructure such as electricity.
They can
and these are people with the means. These
right.
are the people with the means. Instead of funding, a digital identification mechanism for the entire world, why don't you just, maybe build water purification systems in those areas for which the health you seem, claim to be so concerned with. But the fact that this is all in juxtaposition with immunization. Immunization poses a huge opportunity to scale digital identity.
Boom, there's that sales pitch again.
That is fucking crazy.
It's right in your face.
It really is. Anyways.
I mean,
it's just sickening.
It is. And it's using a it's similar to the notion of upselling, like, oh, well, you've only gotten one dose of this, but if you want to join the population of the future, you're going to have this tag to make sure you've got all of these other ones. It seems to be this kind of power of suggestion that you're behind the times, or you're not sort of keeping up with the Joneses unless you've been pricked a whole bunch.
Right. Well, I think for the smart grid, the smart cities, the smartphones, the smart tracking, the smart the 5G, that's all tied together, right? Because how do they, it's like sometimes engineers can be just so practical and pragmatic that they don't see what they're building. You know what I mean? And that's how Apple runs their business. They compartmentalize everything.
This is open.
That's right.
And so you have people who are, specialists working in these discrete fields, and then it all comes together to form this, horrid system. And it's scary because they have so much control over academia. And we see that in the Gilling School of Public Health over there at UNC, in a secret location. They're doing gain of function testing on the Cerveza virus.
That's right.
And literally in this article, they're talking about, basically splicing the RNA with DNA that will essentially, the DNA that they're splicing it with has different infectious capacities. So when they talk about gain of function, that's like when the disease that's the virus, so-called, that they've synthesized in the lab, will now grow easily on the, say, the lung cells of a human. And then, so like while they're talking about what they do is they experiment with these viri that they've isolated from animals to study if it might ever mutate and emerge into the human population. That's what the experiments were all about, and they were all around the Cerveza virus. And so if they successfully synthesize one, then their conclusion is, yes, it could mutate. But it's like you just created one that was mutated to that extent.
Right.
But like you didn't observe that in nature before, but now you've created it. So like, what did you learn? That's clearly like a useful idiot type of exercise, a compartmentalization.
Right.
That research is probably, taken somewhere else with some less, probably more aware individual who's got a nefarious, perhaps a bioweapon intent.
Well, right.
And that's how you get,
the most effective way for you to retain a virus or get a virus is to be injected with it.
Right. And what happened with the swine flu?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Everyone get your swine flu vaccine. Everyone go out and get it. Okay, but that's still around. So clearly vaccines are not a substitute for your own natural immunity. Like, duh. Oh, yeah. And then, and they've been doing this for decades. It goes all back to 76.
What did they give you, Guillain-Barré?
Yeah.
To get the swine flu
Yeah,
vaccine?
yeah, paralysis. Yeah. Oh, the.
I'd rather have the flu for 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, than be paralyzed for the rest of my life. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And it's scary too because people will
Glenn
literally make the connection. I took the flu vaccine. I got the flu.
I'm never gonna get.
But I was protected from the flu. It's like, whoa, your immunity was low.
Why don't you just get the flu?
Right.
See,
why don't you just build your own antibodies?
And that's the so that's the other big fraud, right?
Right.
That how they're terrorizing us into complicity. All this new testing and an argument, you see the politicians like trying to line up and, hey, I'm for accurate testing. I'm for proper testing, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah.
And it's like all of a sudden they flipped a switch and now all of a sudden we can now discriminate. Before it was like, I can be a quadriplegic, but I still should be able to try out and be on the firefighting force. But now you got to get a test for a so-called virus that you could carry asymptomatically. But even if you're positive, you could spread it to somebody who has a lower immunity and then will get sick from it. And therefore you can't work anymore. Like that. It's pathetic. Like the ultimate level of eugenics type discrimination. Mm-hmm. And now I see so many people like just sort of, because they've been worn out, by this lockdown situation, they're desperate to get back to work,
right?
And so they'll be like, take a test. Yeah. Swab me up, hey, I'm doing my part.
There's no adequate testing being offered as any kind of solution. They're not allowing us the option to be tested and return to work. There's no discussion. Again, it's the one size fits all solution that we're supposed to acquiesce to. And I think it's very interesting. I forget if I did or didn't mention it earlier, but our de facto United States has now abandoned the media narrative that the Wuhan wet market is the site of transmission, through animals that were sold at the wet markets.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, none of them tested positive for coronavirus. They didn't even sell bucking bats there. And the only samples that tested positive for, Cerveza virus, were environmental. The CCP subsequently scrubbed the entire area, just eliminating any kind of forensic evidence, and this is the media narrative that we went with. Incidentally, Zero Hedge suggested that the Wuhan lab, which by the way is literally 20 minutes away from this wet market, may be the source or origin of the virus. They were banned off of Twitter, completely blacklisted. And here we are today. Our own government is saying that it is the most likely source. We can't definitively say that yet because we're dealing with the Communist Chinese Party, who continually make things opaque and difficult for any truth to really get out of what has actually happened. But it's important to really understand what exactly they were doing at that lab. That they were literally specializing. One scientist in particularly, Ping Zhao or Zhu, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, was literally, here she is, specializing in bat-like coronaviruses, as was Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina. She published several papers on the subject, and interestingly enough, was researching the molecular mechanism that allows Ebola and SARS-associated coronaviruses to lie dormant for a long time without causing diseases. Okay, while a press release from this lab was titled, How Bats Carry Viruses Without Getting Sick. Okay. It's important to understand that we discontinued funding of this study due to concerns about it just being completely dangerous. But it's interesting that, Australia has joined in with the finger pointing, accusing the Wuhan lab of being the site of transmission, the origin of Cerveza virus.
And when you look at the origins of